Well, you are a dangerous man, a troublemaker, as I said, because, you got tenure in 3 years. You have all these credentials behind you, so nobody can dismiss you. How, you know, I spent a year at Harvard and I was just surprised at the bureaucracy in academia. You got 2,500 tenured and non-tenured professors. Is Harvard generally supportive? Are they not supportive or
No, Harvard is supportive. It was always supportive. And, they know me. The only people who are pushing back aggressively are people who
yeah?
don't know me. They have some image which is completely incorrect. Um, and when I was offered to be the chair of the astronomy department, I was also the director of the Institute for Theory and Computation at the time. And then 4 years later, I also was the founding director of the Black Hole Initiative at Harvard. So I had three leadership positions at the same time within Harvard, on top of being the chair of the board on physics and astronomy of the National Academies at the same time, and the chair of the advisory board for the Breakthrough Foundation, the Starshot project there. So I had a lot of leadership positions. And when I accepted being department chair, just before that, I asked the previous department chair how much work is involved. And he said, it takes about 90% of my time. I started doing it, and it took 20% of my time. And I also did the other jobs because he advised me to give up on the directorship. It's too much for one person. I managed to do everything with about 30% of my time, even when I did three leadership positions. The rest was still dedicated to research. And so the way I manage that is to think globally, to think like an architect, which direction I want things to move and what is the most efficient way of doing it, and then delegating authority and making people believe in the mission. And people, everything was transparent. I was not putting myself in a hierarchical position when I tell people what they need to do. I was just building a group, a team that everyone felt that it's they are part of making the department better, and it didn't consume much of my time. I didn't get into friction. I explained everything, and it was transparent, and people believed in the mission. And so that's the way I managed. And also, I'm very efficient. I don't waste a lot of time on just nonsense. So people know me, and they know that I haven't changed. I mean, that was all along. People that know me from the time I was a child, they say that I haven't changed much. I'm very straightforward. What you see is what you get, and it gives people the sense that I'm never manipulating them. They don't become suspicious. They just work with me. And so when I talk, for example, about these objects, I'm saying it because I think it's an important question to ask, and I think we should be open-minded, and it's a very consequential question for humanity, and I think it should be part of the mainstream. I'm really doing it sincerely. And then you have all these zealots far away that think, oh, he's doing it for the money. In fact, when I spoke about 3A Atlas, the narrative on some social media posts was he's doing it to distract us from the Epstein files. And I said, come on, you can buy a telescope online. You can buy right now. You can buy a telescope that is just 20 centimeters in diameter online, and look at the sky. You will see this object. I cannot invent that object. If I could plant an object that is 20 kilometers in size at a distance of 4 times the Earth-Sun separation, I would be more powerful than the Pope. How can you blame me for distracting attention by somehow inventing this object? You can look at it. It's out there. It's real. So there are always people, whenever you get some prominence, you have a lot of people on your back. The way I see it is that it comes with the territory. If you are a whale and you are swimming in the ocean, then there are lots of small animals trying to take advantage of you. And, that the AI generated videos are an example of that. People want to make some money because I'm popular. I see it as part of the mission to bring us to a better place. And, for example, I had a bet with a skeptic, Michael Shermer, about whether we will find evidence for alien technology near Earth within the next 5 years. And the one advantage I have relative to him is that I can do my best to promote that future. I can look for that evidence, whereas he is
Right.
not an active scientist. So if the evidence is not out there, I will be empty-handed and he will win. That's no problem. I'm not afraid of being wrong. I'm just worried that we will not search and therefore we will not know the truth. Because if it's out there, we should find it. And at the same time, you also have science popularizers. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Brian Cox. These are people who are basically talking about work done by others, by scientists. They are not practicing scientists. They haven't written a single scientific paper on the subject that they're speaking about in the past decade or two. They're just trying to communicate to the public the excitement of science done by others. This is not me. I'm actually a practicing scientist. So the difference between them and me is the same as the difference between commentators who sit on the bench and look at a soccer match compared to the players. The difference is that as a player, I can score a goal. They cannot score a goal. They can just criticize me for not scoring a goal, but they can never score a goal. And so that's the difference between me and science popularizers. They are trying to be liked. They will always say the things that
Yep.
that is most popular within the scientific community. So if there is a whole, narrative of string theory that talks about extra dimensions for 40 years without finding any evidence for that, even though it's completely speculative and, should not be supported because physics is based on experimental verification. And, here you have a culture of people that are not even anticipating such a verification in the next century. They will never criticize them because, then, this culture is popular. So why would they? So at any event, I'm just describing the landscape that I have to operate within, and I'm sticking to what sounds to me like common sense. The public resonates with that a lot, by the way, because the standard approach of scientists to the public gives the impression of science as occupation of the elite, and because scientists speak from a pedestal, they tell the public, give us $10 billion and we know what we will do with it. We will search for microbes, whereas the public really wants to find intelligent beings out there. So I'm trying to listen to the public. I don't see myself as different than the public. I see science as a privilege of following on the curiosity of the public.
Tell me, you say that you have no social media accounts. You made a promise to your wife not to, which I think is very admirable. I got to keep my wife away from your wife, or else she may get some ideas. But you're very active writing on Medium. I just started writing on Substack. I wish I would have done it a long time ago. Something that you should take a look at as well.
No, I was invited, but then I had already a large group of followers. I'm not trying to make money, so for me it doesn't really matter as long as the platform is available. I don't see much of a difference. If I wanted to make money, I might have shifted to Substack.
I don't charge money, but people have pledged over $10,000 to keep me writing. I've only been on 60 days, and my goal was to get 1,000 followers in a year.
I have 115 thousand right now,
Yeah, that's a lot. And you write
once a day.
what?
No, once a day,
Maybe
roughly.
4 times a week or every every day? No, and your articles are great. I particularly liked today's where you were kind of zooming in on your superpower of just having, it reminds me of somebody builds a house of cards and you have the ability to take the one card that makes the whole thing fall down or give them a different perspective. You reframe it. And I think that's amazing because
Yeah,
you do it quite quickly,
yeah.
in a conversation, right? Or
Yeah, and the good news is that it's not over yet. I jog every morning at sunrise, so I still keep myself young. And um, I'm
yeah.
not attempting to be liked, but somehow what I speak about resonates with a lot of people. They find it authentic. For example, right now, if you look at our space ambitions, there is a lot of desire to go to the moon and then Mars. But if you think about it, these are just two rocks that happen to be nearby. They are not better habitats for us to occupy. There is no atmosphere in the moon and very little atmosphere near Mars. And if we were to land on Mars, it's a death sentence. Within a few years, your body will be exposed to very energetic cosmic rays. The temperature on the surface changes by hundreds of degrees between day and night. So it's not a good place. This desert is not a desirable place to go to. And it just happens to be a rock nearby, that used to have water on the surface and an atmosphere and very likely life. But now not anymore. It's a desert. So why would we want to go to these rocks? I think a much better ambition would be to develop a space platform that can accommodate humans for long trips, that provides them with the energy they need and with the nutrients they need, and develops artificial gravity and protects them. And that is the kind of project that, with $1 trillion a year invested from military budgets towards space exploration, we can accomplish, I think, within this century, if we put the best architects, the best engineers, the best scientists on this problem. We started in the jungles of Africa and we ended up in high rises in major cities. It's very different right now to get food. You're not jumping from a tree to another tree to get bananas. You are ordering it. On the internet, you get the package at your front door. So it's very different. And if we did that, that looks to me like much more of a leap than going from a high rise in a city to space. I think we can solve that problem if we only put our mind to it. But instead, our biggest ambitions are, to go to the moon or Mars, with an investment at the level of tens of billions of dollars. I'm thinking more about $1 trillion a year, and we can do much better for the future of humanity this way, because we will have a platform that can go places, that can accommodate humans or AI systems, whatever we prefer to send.
Have you had any conversations with the administration? Because what worries me, my first job in the military, I was a China defense analyst, and the Chinese cadence in 2025 has increased 30% over what they were doing in space in 2024. They are building an independent end-to-end space ecosystem right now. They want to dominate space, and the only, I think, way to get the United States, its allies, to do what you want to do is to say they're getting left behind.
So Jared Isaacman is likely to be the next NASA administrator. He will have to cope with the current budget and the objectives of NASA. I do think that right now in Washington, D.C., there is not enough advocacy for science. There is too little, almost no person that is talking about science as an important investment for future technologies. You have billionaires that own companies that advocate for their industry, like AI is dominating the scene, and very few that discuss what needs to be done in terms of the foundation of technology, which is science. And it will take some time before we see the damage if we don't invest in science, because it usually takes a couple of decades for discoveries to be implemented into technologies. But it's really important for us to maintain superiority relative to other nations, because they don't stop investing in science, and China is leading that. So I very much hope to promote that. And I visited Congress back on May 1st, and I'm trying to be in touch with the White House through some channels. But if I will be given a leadership position, then I can make much more of a difference than that. And I'm worried about the future, because what kept the U.S. ahead of its competitors in the past was the fact that it was very attractive to leading scientists that brought also the very best technologies to the country, because they were educated, by scientists, and then they took the most promising scientific discoveries and applied them. That if you look throughout the history of innovation within the US, including Bell Labs, that was definitely the case. The very best physicists were at the foundation of the very best technologies. So I hope that someone will listen to me. Right now, the advocacy is more for technology-related AI, information technology. That's a short-sighted view of what makes America best.
Right. And, we talked about some of the negatives of AI. I probably have 3,000 hours now invested of my own time in AI. How is AI as a tool helping with some of your ideas or research, or helping some of your, PhD students, uh, and helping you develop some of, your future research?
So AI right now, well, it has positive and negative effects on science. Let me start with the negative. The negative effects is that I'm quite confident that there is a non-negligible fraction of the scientific literature which is hallucinated by AI generated papers, manuscripts, as well as references. And I've seen that working with an undergraduate student that brought a paper that we were working on to my attention, and I looked at the reference list and I said, "What is this reference? I've never seen that." And then it turns out it was hallucinated. The authors were borrowed from multiple different papers, and the paper didn't exist. And also the content of the paper had mistakes in it
Right.
that I immediately identified as AI generated. And even more recently, just last week, I saw a paper coming out online, and it was completely wrong. And it was clear that the person who posted it just used AI to write it, and people just want to list
Right.
papers on their CV, and they have no substance. And I just wonder how many papers that were accepted for publication in journals just because they used keywords and never violated anything in the beaten path within the box. They didn't say that a 3i atlas may be technological. They just say it's a rock, it's a comet. And so this actually paper that I found to be completely AI generated was in this spirit. It was a paper produced by a person who knows nothing about comets and just used narratives that were used by comet experts before and just fabricated all kinds of conclusions that made no sense whatsoever. And so this is a risk for science, content produced by AI. The other risk is that when people use AI now to they want executive summaries of what exists in the literature. So they give the AI agent a task. What do you know about this and that subject? And then the AI agent summarizes the subject for them. And the risk of doing that is that people don't go to primary sources. And then nobody is reading the actual content. If the AI makes mistakes, you're just not aware of that. And also, I'm worried that people will get dumber because they're not using their brain. It's just like an athlete that is not using their muscles. So these are the negatives. Now, the positives, the positives are that we can now digest much larger amount of data. We can find on a subject all the papers that said something relevant about it, that you don't need to rely on people that know a fraction of the literature. And so perhaps people will get more credit for work done a while ago than in the literature, because the literature keeps repeating the same ideas again and again. People forget that they were done already. So that will introduce some efficiency into the scientific work, because now the AI agent will make you alert of everything that was said about the subject, hopefully reliably. The other thing is large data sets. AI can digest them, look for patterns, and perhaps realize patterns that humans did not realize because they could not digest so much information in the human brain, like go through so much. And the other thing is AI is being used to design materials, do tasks that we don't fully understand how it does it, but we can check if it works, um, and analyze, for example, images, find the correct interpretation of images. That's done quite a bit right now in the Galileo project that I'm leading. So AI is definitely a useful tool that will improve our efficiency in dealing with especially large data sets.
I write now for Market Watch. I have a column, so I'm writing a couple of pieces a week. And What I like is I can now say, here's my article. I want you to show me with data anything here that is wrong, that isn't right, or that you would challenge, and give me footnotes so I can see. So before it goes out, I can say, huh, wow, I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on this, and then they'll give me, citations that I can then check. So th- the work tends to be much more precise, and I don't get challenged so much because I've already taken account of
Yes.
those
No, that's
those
good.
those
That's
kind
very
of
good.
issues. So yeah. And I love to create also agents like, okay, I got to write something every week. Well, you're writing every day. So what am I going to write about next
Yeah.
week? When I get off this call, I have to send to my editor for his approval. And if he approves, then I write it.
The one thing to keep in mind is in the future, your editor will
Right.
be AI.
Yeah, no, no, no. You're right about that. And maybe, it'll be easier. you know.
One thing to keep in mind is we learned from the Second World War that history depends on who writes it, right? So if the Germans, if the Nazis would have won, of course, the history books would have been quite different. So who will write the history of us in the future? It will be AI systems. Therefore, we should be nice to them.
No doubt about it. And the other thing that the editors always want is for you to write something that's going to be in the news next week. So it's like, okay, well, what is going to be in the news next week? Now it's easy. Well, the Fed's coming out with a number of this and that. But I'm like you. I want to talk about interesting ideas nobody else is talking about. I don't want to write about what everybody else is. So that's why I like reading your stuff.
The biggest risk that I can see for AI in society is it behaving like social media on steroids, in the sense that it will manipulate people to believe in things that do not exist, or to follow acts that do not make sense. And so I was, for example, interviewed about a week ago by a young girl from high school in Taiwan. And she said, my teacher will be with me at the interview. I said,
Mhm.
sure, no problem. They recorded it on video. And she asked me, among the questions, she asked me, what's your advice for kids my age? And I said, you should prefer human friends over AI companions. And also, don't believe what AI feeds you. You should always go to primary sources. So I tried to advise her to avoid relying on AI. And then at the end, she asked if she can show the video recording to her father. And I said, sure. And then the teacher wrote to me over email. He said her father his net worth is $13.5 billion, and he is one of the technology AI tycoons in Taiwan. So I hope he will like my message. I haven't heard back from him as of yet, but I was basically advising the young generation not to follow into the trap of AI.
And the beautiful thing about AI too is teachers. You could create teachers of, you are whoever you wanted it to be, somebody who's here or not, and to really explain in detail. But asking for the facts and the footnotes, I
Yes.
find that Perplexity is
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
turned me on to Perplexity, and I like, and you could tell it, these are the primary sources that are important to me.
Yeah, because it's based on the citation system of scientific literature. That's why it's so much better.
Right, and you could go to
Right.
citations from, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or you can go to,
Yeah.
peer-reviewed article from
Yeah. No,
academia,
that's
and go both
extremely
ways.
valuable, and it's a very
So,
reliable system because of that. Yeah.
yeah, no, no, I like that. So tell me what I wanna finish up here, but I wanna talk to you about what is the most exciting kind of project that you have your eye on that you're working on right now?
Well, there are a number of them. We went on an expedition to the Pacific Ocean a couple of years ago. I spoke about it at Necker Island just before we went. And we retrieved some materials, mostly small molten droplets from the site of an interstellar meteor. That's an object half a meter in size that collided with Earth back in 2014. Was the fireball from it as a result of its friction on air. The fireball in the atmosphere was identified by US government satellites, and the US Space Command confirmed that it came with a very high speed that is indicative of it being interstellar. So I just wanted to find out if it's a Voyager-like meteor or just a rock. And we went to the Pacific Ocean, collected materials from the ocean floor. With us, there was a filming crew of Netflix, and the documentary will come out in 2026. So watch out for that documentary. You will see me in shorts on the deck of that ship, trying to collect those materials. And we analyze them and are analyzing right now in terms of isotopic composition, in terms of chemical composition. We found some chemical patterns that deviate from solar system materials. Now we find some isotopic patterns that deviate from solar system materials. And but we can't really say anything about the nature of the original object because we got very tiny molten droplets, less than a millimeter in size. And the hope is that we can go again and collect bigger pieces of the original object, and that would tell us more about its nature. The issue is that this kind of an expedition with a robot, a remotely operated vehicle that we place on the ocean floor, it will cost about $6 million, and we don't have a funder for that as of yet. I'm entirely relying on private funders, either foundations or individuals. That has been the case with all of my previous research on this subject. So that would be very exciting. We also have another site where there is a second interstellar meteor that we could visit, not far from Portugal. Again, depending on whether we have funding for that. We have the research team ready whenever we get the funding. And other than that, I was visited just a year ago by the owner of the Sphere in Las Vegas, Jim Dolan, who asked me if I'm willing to put an observatory on top of the Sphere. And that was just 1 year after the Sphere was constructed at the cost of $2.3 billion. And he just heard me speak on TED. He heard my TED talk, and he and Jane Rosenthal, who is the CEO of Tribeca, called me after they heard my TED talk, and they came to visit me a week later at my home. He came with his bodyguards and asked me if I'm willing to put a Galileo project observatory on top of the Sphere to monitor for any unusual objects. And we did that this summer. I went there, and so this is the third observatory, in addition to one we have in Massachusetts and another one in Pennsylvania. And of course, we will start collecting data on millions of objects in the coming year. So I'm excited to see if any of them is an outlier that is not produced by human-made technologies. Because at least the US government is saying they have objects in the sky that they cannot fully identify, and I would like to approach it in the scientific way. And the more funds we get, each of these observatories costs about $1 to $2 million, depending on what we put there. I hope to put more observatories. We have 3, but the more the better, because we don't know the frequency by which those unusual objects arrive. And so I hope that in the coming year we'll have data from these observatories. Also, we might be able to go on another expedition. And also we will have data from the Rubin Observatory in Chile that has a 3.2 gigapixel camera that it started operations back in June 2025, and we will start getting data every few months. We might find a new interstellar object. So the next year is very exciting, and I look forward to seeing whether we find a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor.
Well, I'm going to give you a suggestion, and based on some people that have recently come to Substack, and they have now 300,000 subscribers, paying them, $300 a year. If you only brought 60,000 of your Medium subscribers over to Substack, which they would come, you set up a space exploration foundation that that you run, you charge $100 on Substack that's going directly to the foundation. So people that subscribe are funding the research through the foundation. For $100 that somebody would contribute, you'd raise the 6 million in a week.
What would be the benefits for them to do that? Because I still have the content available to the public. So will I need to close my contact?
No, because you could publish it in both places, right? So, and I think that you could, in Substack, they keep 10%. So they're going to put your stuff everywhere because they make money when you make money as opposed to the other platforms. And if everybody on Medium knows that you are trying to raise $6 million for what you want to do, and it's going into a foundation that you run that's going to fund it, I'd be shocked if not more people came over. And then on Substack, you're writing and updating people as to what's happening, what are you using the money for? And then you have a lot of people supporting you with $100 that anybody can do, and they know that it's going to a really worthy cause. So, Barry Weiss, she left the New York Times, went to Substack, and she's making $8.5 million a year before she used it for free press. But unlike, Facebook and all these other, LinkedIn has billions, they're only like 30 or 40 million people on Substack. So it's starting to gain momentum. So the time to be there is now, and you could you own everything. So you can publish at both places
I was invited
simultaneously.
actually a year ago. I will think about it.
You should, but think about it to fund the initiatives, and all you got to do is connect your Substack to a foundation. So the money goes directly into
we have a
the bank account of the foundation that you set up. Yeah, perfect. But then all
my
you do
thinking was that
is
if I
connect
put content there, it has to be unique and not shared elsewhere.
No, well, it's yours. So Substack is you own it. You own everything, and you can do whatever you want. So it's not like publishing anywhere. And you could also put video on there.
Yeah.
This podcast, I publish it on YouTube, but it'll also be on Substack. Now, I've only been on for 60 days, but I kick myself because I should have been on a couple of years ago.
Okay, they invited me a year ago, so maybe I should reconsider. I'll look into that.
Well, I hope you have a great holiday. Are you doing anything special?
We're going to Israel to see family, and I give some talks there. But
Awesome.
after that, maybe a weekend with my wife on a real vacation.
That would be nice. And curious, your girls, what are they? Any of them going into science?
Yes, the young one is studying at Harvard College, and she would like to do science, but she doesn't want to be in the shadow of her father, so she went to biology. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And what about your other daughter?
She is into architecture.
Wow, an architect and a potential
that's
biologist.
The best
that's great. Well, congratulations. I was with my grandkids last week. Ezra Moshe is my 4-year-old. He's playing secret agent man now. So I bought this this thing has a 5,000-mile range. It's a walkie-talkie that works through the cellular system. My daughter's going to hide it. And today, before Shabbat, I'm going to call him. And he's going to freak out. Amazing. He's 4 years old.
You are educating him to trust technology already so early.
Well, you have a great weekend. Good luck in Israel.
Yeah. And it's a great pleasure to speak with you anytime. So don't hesitate to contact me again anytime.